Today we are going to be multiplying binomials. It's just a little review of what we've done in the past. And tomorrow we're going to get into factoring polynomials. And so here, this is a big concept of multiplying because factoring is kind of doing the opposite of. So let's take a look at our first terms here, x and x. Those are our first terms. And those first terms multiply to make an x squared. So remember, we're just doing x times x makes x squared. Then we moved on to the outside terms. And those are x and negative 2. And since it's a negative and a positive, it's a negative 2x. Once we've multiplied those, we move on to the inside terms. And so the inside terms are 6 and x. So those make a positive 6x. And then the last terms here. So the last terms are 6 and negative 2. And those multiply to make a negative 12. So what we do is we collect any terms we can. So we're looking at the four terms, and when we see the terms with the same variables raised to the same powers, we can collect those. So those are both opposite in sign, so we end up having to subtract those two numbers. So we end up with an x squared plus 4x minus 12 as our answer. Moving on to the next one, we see that this is a quantity being squared. So again, the common mistake. The mistake is people do this. They say x squared plus 25. But that's wrong. Don't do that. Remember, you've got to write it out twice. X plus 5 and x plus 5. So once we've written it out twice, we're going to go ahead and use that FOIL method, multiplying the first terms. So remember, the first terms here are x and x make an x squared. Then we move on to the outside terms. And the outside terms are an x multiplied by a 5. And that makes 5x. Now what we noticed about these binomials being squared on Thursday's homework from last night is that from last time we met, is that we have the same outer and inner terms, and that's what we have here. You see, we have another 5x for the inside terms. 5 and x make 5x again. And then we have our last terms. 5 and 5 make 25. And so we can collect these two numbers because they have the same variables raised to the same power, both x to the first. And so that gives us 10x. So don't write squared. So we're counting up how many x's. Here you have 5 x's, and these 5 x's are being added together. And then we have another 5 x's being added together. Makes a total of 10 x's being added together. X squared, though, meant that we had 2 x's being multiplied. See our first terms here, x times by x, 2 x's multiply to make x squared. And then bring down that 25. Taking a look at the next one, the same sort of thing. We've got another binomial square. So the first thing you're going to do is write it out twice, and then we use that FOIL method. So we're going to multiply the first, outer, inner, and last terms together. So 2x times 2x. Those are our first terms. So first terms here, 2x times 2x. A lot of people do this. They write 4x. What's wrong with that? Well, 2 times 2 is 4, but x times x, remember, that makes x squared. So don't make that mistake. Make sure you have 4x squared here. If you don't, you'll end up adding it to the outside and inside terms if they have the same variable raised to the same power. So let's take a look at our outside terms here. It's 2x times by negative 7. So plus 2x times by negative 7. This is just a negative 14x because we have just one x here. So notice we have one x here. 2x's meant x squared being multiplied. Move on to the inside terms. Note again that we have the same sign again because plus negative 7 times 2x. We get another negative 14x. Same numbers, and the same sign. So you're going to end up adding those. And then the last terms, those were the inners. Last terms are a negative 7 and a negative 7. So that's another thing about binomials being squared. The last term is always positive, no matter what, because it's the same sign being multiplied. So all you have to do is collect the two like terms. These two right here are the same. Variable raised to the same power. Makes a negative 28x, and then just bring everything else down. 4x squared, and bring down the plus 49. So there it is, our answer. Well, taking a look at the next one, we don't have a binomial being squared this time, just a regular old two binomials being multiplied. So let's take a look at the first terms there. They're 5x times by 3x, so that makes a 15x squared. Make sure you get that squared symbol there. Outside terms are a 5x and a 8, so 5x times by 8, leaving me with a 40x. Moving on to the inside terms, we have a negative 2 and a 3x, so inside negative 2 times by 3x, and that makes a negative 6x. And then the last terms, negative 2 and 8. So last terms, negative 2 times by 8 gives me a negative 16. So we're able to collect these two terms because they have the same variable raised to the same power. So bring down our 15x squared, subtract those two numbers because they're opposite signs, leaves us with a positive 34x. And then we bring down that minus 16, and there is our answer. Taking a look at the next one, we have to multiply the 3x and the 2x. Again, don't get in the habit of thinking that is 6x. It's not. 3x times by 2x. That makes a 6x squared. Well, this problem's a little different because we have some y's involved, different variables. So let's take a look at that one. Outer terms. So it's a 3x times by negative 7y. 3x times by negative 7y. Well, people think, what do we do? They'd have different variables. Well, all you do is just multiply them together, and if they're not the same variable, you just write them next to each other. So 3 times negative 7 makes negative 21, and then just xy. So when you're multiplying, not the same variable, write them next to each other, and that means they're multiplied. Well, we go ahead and move on to the inside terms. Those were our outer there, so inside are right here. So inner terms are a negative 8, so negative 8y times by 2x. Again, you're just multiplying the two numbers, so you get negative 16, and then yx is the same as xy. Moving on to our last terms, negative 8y and negative 7y. Those multiply to make a positive 56y squared. And that's another mistake. People think, oh, it's just 56y, but no. Just like the x's here being multiplied made x squared, here the two y's make y squared. Well, you're able to collect a couple terms. Let's go ahead and do that. This one here and this one here have the same variables raised to the same power, so they combine together. So we'll go ahead and bring down our 6x squared. And here we have to add those two numbers together, so it makes a negative 37xy. And then plus the 56y squared. So there is our answer. Moving on to the last one here. This one, same sort of thing, x times by 2x. Those are our first terms. So the first terms make a 2x squared. And then we go on to the outside terms, x times by 5. So outside terms are a 5x. Let's move on to the inside terms now. So inner terms are a negative 9 and a 2x, makes a negative 18x. And then the last terms, we have a negative 9 and a 5. That just makes a negative 45. So we're able to collect the outside and inside terms. They have the same variables raised to the same power. So we go ahead and do that, and we end up bringing down our 2x squared. Subtract these two numbers. They're opposite in sign, so it makes a negative 13x. And then bring down that minus 45. And there is our answer. Well, those are the problems on tonight's homework. Good luck.